Evening, everyone. Great to see so many of you, and thank you for your time this evening. We'd like to also thank Vancouver Startup Week for providing us this opportunity on their platform. As a quick introduction, my name is Kevin Nelson, and along with my teammates, Alain Rivera,
hey,
and Lauren Bergman and Andre Alide, we're the High Technology Facilities Group at CBRE. What this specifically means is that when it comes to finding a home for your business, our team works with more technology companies than anyone in the city, solely representing their interests on assignments and finding their new homes. And we see so many more deals than anyone else. It gives us more hidden opportunities and more moves we can play on the chessboard. So that's our quick value pitch. Lauren is actually CBRE's National Workplace Strategist, who not only led CBRE's national transformation of all their offices across Canada, but also led our back to work COVID strategy over the last sort of 4 or so months. So, okay, tonight, the ground rules. Our objective is for you to walk away saying this was time well spent, that the High Technology Facilities Group at CBRE is awesome. And so we ask the following: interrupt us, please ask questions. We want you to help direct this conversation and help to shape the narrative that we intend to deliver tonight. With that, let's get into the changing landscape of work. So we intend to cover a few things. There's the noise, the duplicity, the strategies, the market, and the future. And I'm intentionally being a bit vague about that because we want to leave you on the edge of your seat as we go through this. So quick stat, as of September 20th, the average tenant population in the 3 largest landlord portfolios in downtown Vancouver were as follows. Bentall Centre, which is 1.1 million square feet. There's only 20% of people back at work. Cadillac Fairview, which owns everything, including Pacific Centre, but everything surrounding Pacific Centre, 3.4 million feet. They're higher, they're at 35% occupancy, and there's an asterisk, we'll explain it a bit later there. Oxford Properties, only 15 to 20%. Results. Some firms are at 0% back to work, while others in the financial industry and legal firms are closer to 70%. And at CBRE, we're sort of somewhere around 35 to 40% of this week. And this is where we get into the noise. The sensational headlines of Q2, where the likes of Facebook, Twitter, Google, and Shopify, to name a handful, declared work from home forever, the death of office, and it forced a reaction out of everyone. If these global giants giant trendsetters actually are headed in this direction, well, then we better have a similar position in order to retain employees, attract talent, and be sensitive to our shared human experience. In Q2, our CBRE team actually had to look in the mirror and ask if our industry had just been obsoleted. I mean, what if in the future there really was no need for office? But then we started to see the duplicity in these comments as we rolled into Q3, right up to the end of this month. Amazon committing to another 2.75 million square feet in Bellevue and 750,000 feet in Manhattan. Shopify exercising rights of expansion for another 90,000 feet in Toronto. Facebook is buying REI's headquarters in Seattle and expanding by another 730,000 feet in Manhattan. And TikTok took down nearly 250,000 feet in Times Square as well. I mean, and these are just a handful of the major announcements in the past 3 months. So, wait, I actually was legitimately confused, as I'm sure you are. These are major positions that these companies are taking down, not just little, project spaces for some teaming. So were their comments in Q2 just opportunistic words to be used in a negotiation at a moment in time with a vendor or a landlord? I mean, who knows? But the effect has been to force smaller companies to react and follow suit in order to feel competitive for their employees. So why did these giants place these bets? Which leads us to the results of a poll question we posed to local tech leaders last week. What is the greatest challenge facing your company at present? And the clear answer was productivity. Work from home is working, people are happy, but it's starting to wane. And we're worried about the future creativity and how competitive we'll become without organic collaboration and idea generation. In fact, pure negative was how Netflix CEO Reed Hastings described it in the Wall Street Journal on September 7th. It's harder to debate ideas and collaborate, were the words he used. Another thought for you to consider is that in a poll of 451 founders at 141 venture capital firms, that VCs are less likely to invest in startups with a fully remote workforce. And this was from the Silicon Valley Business Journal at the end of Q2. And the reasons they cited were that remote companies can be fragile. They have less traction with their brain trust. There's more turnover, and they don't have the anchoring of their staff that they need. And to be honest, they shared that it would take 3 to 6 years to change their mind. They wanted to see market cycles in funding, in market share, IPOs. And so at the moment, they took a hard stance on it. So with those questions hanging out there, let's talk about the strategies we're seeing from companies right now live in Vancouver. They're your peers. So we're now seeing companies like Phoenix Labs, a gaming company, Unity Technologies, another gaming company, and a couple legal firms take advantage of dropping lease rates in the sublease market and actually taking additional space. You see, these companies are in fact looking to spread out their staff safely in order to foster collaboration, mentorship, education, and productivity. Those are the reasons they cited to us. These companies are essentially betting that a 5% increase in their operating budget will yield a multiple in productivity, leading to increased profitability. And it's going to keep them more future competitive. Another strategy we're also seeing is companies looking to convert their real estate into centers of excellence. Firms like Pay by Phone and Eastside Games are contemplating reinventing their premises into the coolest collaborative spaces that they can imagine, so that you will want to go to the office, get charged up with the ideas and creative purpose that you will then take and balance some percentage of your work week from working from home. And this strategy is what we feel is dominating the collective mindset at present in Vancouver, well, and actually is a sampling through North America, that there is a balance of work from home and work from office that will yield maximum competitiveness while yielding maximum employee happiness. So look, the earth shifted under all of our feet this year. The evolution of space is happening at an accelerated rate. But unlike the announcements of Q2, the actual evidence is suggesting a counter trend in strategy, which balances the need for companies to remain competitive while increasing employee satisfaction. That work from home is going to provide for some. So now that the stage is set, are there any questions to this point? Give it a quick second here. If nothing's jumping up, then I'll turn this over to Alain and Andre to give you an update on the market and what COVID has done to the office market in Vancouver at present. And thank you.
Perfect. Yeah, thanks, Kevin. It's insightful info as always. And of course, it's good to dive a bit deeper into the true story of what's happening in the market. And guys, I'll keep my part pretty brief here, but I do want to dive into a little bit of the market data and some of the stats on the office market today, and just show you a little bit about what this might mean for you. So just looking at this right here, it's our vacancy and absorption forecast. So what we can see really, the last story, I mean, over the last 5 years has essentially been tightening vacancy and increasing lease rates. You can see here the orange line being the vacancy rate from 2015 up until essentially Q1 in 2020 has just been going down. And we went to a low of 2.2%, and we were almost 10% before that. So it left a lot of Vancouver companies quite frustrated, and it was continuing to trend downwards, and we just didn't see it getting any better. But given recently there's been an impact to the market, and we now do see a forecast of changing conditions. So we have an abundance of new space that's come out through the sublease market, record amount of office space under construction. And when you add that to current leasing demand, we're expecting vacancy to spike back up here, as we can see with the pink new forecasted dotted line there. But so what does this mean for you overall? Well, like I said, up to date, all we've seen is a tightening market with increasing occupancy costs and a decreasing amount of options available. So you're now finally heading into a market where you're going to have more negotiating power and a significant amount of opportunities to take advantage of. So to put it in short, it's going to be the best office tenant market in the last 7 years. And just moving on here to the availability slide. So just a quick snapshot of availability is what's on the market today. We see here on the vacancy rate of all classes, 3.3%. That's up from 2.2 at the beginning of the year. And we actually are just finishing the Q3 2020 slides. This is Q2, and it's looking more like 4.4%. So it's essentially doubled since the beginning of the year. Just to point out one thing here too, 20,000 square foot options there was 7 right now, and at the beginning of the year there was only 1. So we're starting to see some of those bigger chunks of spaces come available as well. But overall, what does this slide really mean for you? Well, for most of you here, it's Vancouver Startup Week. Some of you are startups that are going to be considering smaller office space from your team. And we've circled here at the bottom the 0 to 5,000 square foot range. So this is kind of that smaller range that's going to be tailored to under 20 to 30 employee companies, and 190 options to choose from Q2. Now it's going to be well over 200. All these options compete heavily with each other, so you've got more leverage to secure a flexible lease structure and lower rent. So we just wanted to showcase that that is where the opportunity is at hand today. And Alain can dive a bit deeper here into the sublease market and how we can look at that as well.
Awesome. Hey guys, Alain here. Can you hear me well? Andre, that's good?
Yeah.
Awesome. So again, just a few other boring stats, but I think very helpful and very informational to help, I guess, decision makers, startup founders make decisions on whether or not to have an office, to move, and really how to think about making those decisions, timing it as well. So the sublease market, as Andre indicated, is where the new opportunities are coming from. So here, really quickly, what we're highlighting is, total listings. There's over 130 now. Again, this is just a snapshot in time. That number has increased since creating this slide, and it's changing weekly. And if you look at the trends at the bottom of this chart, really, what's the trend? It's, we came off of at the end of 2019, a record low number of available spaces, available subleases, 37. And since then, it's just been an explosion of listings of companies saying, we're working from home until we know where the world's at. And until then, let's see if we can get rid of our space and cut costs. So while a lot of people and a lot of you are probably still doing that and still working from home and still uncertain in your decisions, keep in mind that if you are considering a space, even in the next 6 months or a year, there are some incredible opportunities to take advantage of, which we can dive in deeper directly, so definitely reach out. But it's a time like no other that we've had in the last 5-7 years. And so just to dig a little further into the sublease market and what that really is, a sublease is a company who has a lease and they're trying to get out of that lease. And a lot of the times they're signing 3-5 year leases. You've probably heard of that. So for startups, what's really great about the sublease market is a lot of times there's a year or 2 years left on that. So it's really not a long-term commitment, and you can get it at reduced fees, and you can have it with furniture included. It's wired, internet's up and running. It really is a move-in ready space with super low cost to get in. And your rent can also be low. So for context, for short-term spaces, in terms of commitments, we've highlighted here almost 30% of the available subleases expire, they end, they're only the commitments are below 2 years, which really gives you, some flexibility without making that long-term commitment. And then out of curiosity, and in the next 3 years, graph on the right, over half of the spaces are below 5,000 square feet. So what does that mean for you? It means a ton of options, a ton of selection, and you can have spaces competing. And really, as Kevin kind of pointed out, we're all working from home, and I think some of us are starting to struggle. A lot of young employees, they're living in condos and they're struggling to maximize productivity there. We think the work from home is here to stay. It is, but with flexibility and having a small office presence where you can tap in, parts of the day or certain days and work from home as well, will enable your employees and key people management to get together in an office environment that's designed to work to maximize productivity. And so that's what we're kind of trying to talk about here is if you're looking for a small place to make sure you're maximizing your productivity these days, there's great opportunities. The pendulum swung quite far to work from home, and it does seem like it's swinging back. We're seeing quite a few companies start to take advantage of these kind of opportunities, clients of ours as well. There's a lot of reasons and a lot of things that are going to change how we do work, but the office, from what we can see, definitely has a place. It's not going anywhere. It's just in flux. It's changing. And Lauren is going to talk a little bit more about what it looks like in terms of the future and how it's changing and what we think we're going to see for the long-term trend of office. Over to you, Lauren.
Thanks. Good evening, everyone, and really happy to be talking all things office of the future. It's pretty exciting times. As part of we'll just go to the next slide. The real big thing we've been talking about with our clients lately is not really just about reopening. It's about more focus on their long-term strategy. Whatever decisions they make, they want to make sure that they're investing wisely for the future. So when we talk clients, we kind of talk in terms of pre-vaccine and post-vaccine to kind of get us all on the same understanding. So we'll just move to the next slide to talk a little bit about some of our research, which I think is super exciting because we get this from all around the world. And I think with COVID, that was really key for us to get a feeling for what was happening in the Asia Pacific region, what was happening in Europe. And as we started to talk with clients from two different perspectives, it helped us formulate what we think is going to be the future of work. So this is a recent survey we did in June. I'm just going to really highlight one major point. I think this is the biggest one everyone's contending with, the first one. Everyone's really analyzing the impact of a larger remote workforce, as Alain was talking about. How does that start to impact the size of your space or what your space is going to have to do now in this new normal? There's other pieces here that are about flexibility as well as efficiency, but I think that's really been top of mind with all the clients we've been meeting with recently. The next slide, though, I really like because it speaks to what's really important from an employee perspective and what would really be the trigger that's making people want to get back. You know, I think we all thought, you know, the first 3 months is we can get our laundry done, we can make a great dinner. All of those things were wonderful, but after about 6 months, we're starting to see this fatigue. So what is it that's going to be important for people? And one of the big ones is work-life balance. Having work kind of infiltrate our home to the degree it has, I think a lot of people have been working very, very long hours and not being able to kind of find that work-life balance anymore because there is no separation. Another big one is the connection to the community and that feeling of, hey, I'm here with, you know, a group of like-minded people. We get along. I don't know how even they're doing because I'm just working within my own work stream. That's been an issue because I think that starts to speak to the essence and culture of the company. And we know that an office will be key to do that and to keep really reinforcing the culture. And then number 4, here I am working at my dining room table, and I can tell you that the better ergonomics are sadly missed, and I'm not alone in that arena. I think that's going to be really, really important in getting people really excited about coming back. And again, to what degree people will coming back is still to be determined, but better ergonomics are a really, really big driver. So on the next slide.
Yeah, Lauren, I can attest big time to the ergonomics thing. I've been at work every day as soon as we could go every day, and like my body feels better. The kitchen counter is not doing it for me.
I mean, we're not, you know, ergonomics is one piece of it, but it is just the activity too. It's the amount of steps you get in, right? Talking to people and going to meetings and getting to work and all of those pieces. So that's going to be really, really important. So this is where, you know, the conversation kind of shifts now, like how might work change? And I think this is top of mind for everybody. There's a lot of theories out there, but I still think it's very early days. We really base our practice on being evidence-based. And I think, frankly, there's a lot more material that still needs to come in. One that I like to think about a lot is innovation. I think it hasn't been measured yet. You know, Kevin was telling you that the companies that we polled recently talked about productivity, and I think that's an easier measure, and innovation will take time. So when we get to looking at how things might change, just keep in mind this is early days. So number 1, we talk about a phenomena called cocooning, where we get to get our physical distancing. And I think this is an aspect of feeling a little bit more like you have more room around you and you like some aspect of solitude. I actually think we might start to see more and more types focus spaces and quiet niches in offices to allow people to cocoon. The other thing that I think is going to be key is how does an office really start to build more community and collaboration focus? And we'll show you some spaces that I think are going to do that really well, at least examples of. Bringing work to home is also going to be a phenomena that I think we've seen in the last 5 years, frankly, in workplace. There's been this real residential feeling coming more and more into workplace. That's going to be, you know, really accelerated more and more as people want those comforts that they've gotten used to. And as far as meetings go, I think this is going to be challenging because we know that we're going to have people working remotely, maybe 1 or 2 or 3 days a week, full time. Meetings will remain virtual. So it'll be a matter of figuring out, you know, are you going to have some team members in the office and some virtual? That's going to change all the time. And I think we have to expect that that's going to continue forever, that aspect of having virtual participants will be key to any meeting so that everyone is included. And last but not least, I think we've all seen that management has changed forever because you can't really measure productivity, et cetera, just by the physical presence of someone. So I will tell you that a lot of managers are struggling with this. And we're starting to hear now from executives that their managers are seeing emerging productivity gaps the longer this has gone on. So I do think that we're going to have technology that assists with that assessment for the managers, but it's going to take time. And in the interim, they're having to spend more and more time with their employees to touch in, etc. On the next slide, I really wanted to just touch on kind of a myth that we're seeing is that everyone thought that, you know, a hoteling type of environment probably was going to be really, really frowned upon after COVID. And the truth of the matter is that the utilization of real estate is becoming top of mind as executives are walking and seeing that no one in the office, or if they are, there's maybe 25% of the people. So I think if that's what hoteling it is, you don't necessarily have your own desk. That's something that a lot of people are starting to talk about now because we know that we're going to be able to do that safely by ensuring certain housekeeping policies as well as using technology. So excuse me, although people thought that this was maybe going to be not exactly accepted moving into a future where we're worried about everything that we touch, we know there's going to be ways to deal with that. And frankly, a lot of our are accelerating a hoteling type of approach, along with having a structured way that people come into the office. And by that, I mean that not everyone has Mondays and Fridays off, that it's done in a structured way throughout the week so that they're getting good utilization of their real estate. And technology and apps that allow people to book their desks or book a meeting room or book a place in the cafe, whatever that it looks like, is going to be a key piece in this. So when we look at the next slide, it kind of starts to point to where the complication is from what we have currently. Normally, the workspace of today is more about the workstation and the private work area throughout those spaces. But the workplace of the future, we know, is going to be really important for people to connect in and be able to collaborate in effectively. And I want to show you some things about what we think that means as far as space and usability. But then the ability to concentrate, and on the right here, you see a focus room. And essentially, that's just one of many, many examples of the types of spaces that people are going to want to have so that they can have that quiet time and be able to really focus in sprints. So that ability to concentrate can't be underestimated. And I think that finding that new balance is going to be key. It's not to say there's still not going to be open work areas, and we'll get to that a little bit later, but this concentration and collaboration are really, really the focus of the space now. So what some of those spaces might look like, if we go to the next slide, we start to see maybe a different approach that is more responsive, and we call it hackable, in that people can set it up the way they want to. Obviously, there's technology everywhere and the ability to have those virtual, but I think being able to change these spaces around is really going to be key moving forward to really accommodate and entice people to share those ideas. And the next slide. This, I think, is a really good example of how you can build that fertile ground for collaboration. You see that things are movable. There's pin-up space. There's, obviously resources. I just heard of another great example of one of our projects in the US where, again, more tech and engineer based, they were going to make what they called maker space. And adjacent to those spaces, they were going to have labs and 3D printers. So although the engineers weren't going to be working full time in the office, it was going to be great for them to be able to collaborate. So the message here is having those resources around and being able to share materials really easily. Slide. We see that we also need to remember, though, it's more common focused. And by no means is this, your typical office, but we're just trying to evoke that feeling of having these spaces that can really allow for that focused work that are a completely different atmosphere from the rest of the office.
Yeah, Lauren, this to me, this kind of reminds me of, I don't know, like if I'm going to the library to study, or like, I mean, if I had a home that had a space this big, it kind of looks homey as well, and like a kind of calming, quiet place to focus. Yeah.
Yeah, what's kind of cool about that is I had actually done a couple of, in the last 2 or 3 years, this came up with a couple of tech clients where they wanted to have almost a library atmosphere for some of their work areas. So they weren't necessarily delineating teams by department, more by work style. So throughout the day, if people needed to focus, again, it didn't look like this. Obviously, there were monitors and desks and, really comfortable chairs, but it was more about an etiquette. So people were, they knew and understood they needed to be quieter in that environment. So I think that's going to also take shape, and it kind of leads to our next slide.
That looks like fun.
This one's a little more extreme, obviously, but when we talk about different atmospheres, it's not really, that you're jumping from one atmosphere to another per se. It really would depend on your work style. And this is showing an example of one team that obviously loves a lot of plants. And I would love to work in that area because there's a lot of daylight too coming in because those plants are so healthy. But it's just an example to show you that frankly, people are really starting to rethink that maybe one team wants to work this way and then another works in a very different way. And it's okay to change it up because we love that, there is no one size fits all. So build more of a dynamic office to achieve that. And then the next slide, I think this is where we started to talk about, in my earlier piece about the workplace being really key as that piece to build the culture in the community. So not necessarily the most appropriate things are in all this image, but I think it's something that we need to think about, really activating spaces, not just meeting, activating. What are some creative activities that are specific to what your people like? to make it really, really exciting. And I think this is going to be one of the biggest challenges for companies, is to make their unique mark on how are they going to create these types of spaces to energize and challenge.
Yeah, I think one key kind of takeaway as well is that's coming out of all of this is that there's an emphasis on making the office a desirable place to go to, and these are many different examples of the different kind of spaces within the larger office that will entice and be exciting for people to go to, because they know they can focus, they know they can collaborate, they know they can get energized in all these different areas, which is, I think I'm looking forward to this. It's cool.
Yeah, I know. And I think what's kind of happened on that front is, new employees have been hired during this time, and the office has been closed. And so they've been onboarding in such a way that they're just having Zoom sessions with their teams and, other people throughout the organization. And one thing that our clients are starting to say is that's really been challenging for them to get a feeling for the culture. And, we have a saying at CBRE that the workplace is a silent partner to strategy and culture. And I think that for new employees specifically, we're really starting to see that be an issue. So I think this is a way of showcasing your brand, but more importantly, like you were getting at, Alain, it's more about your culture.
Yeah, absolutely. And then I think that's something else that goes hand in hand with that is a lot of these new employees or newer employees, if they're hired just before COVID, is, not just getting to know people, but actually, feeling like they're really part of a big team and culture and retention. And without that big culture component or a smaller feeling of culture and kind of team effort via just online and work from home, I think, yet to see, but what the turnover is going to be from different tech employees, developers and whatnot, making changes because they don't feel like they're as tied or as invested personally.
Which was actually straight to that
well.
Yeah, straight to the point that VCs had on funding virtual companies. They were less likely to do so for that very reason.
Yeah, and I mean, guys, how many studies have I read? My favorite one is from MIT that talks about the importance of face-to-face meetings to create innovation, to create the most successful teams. So, how are we going to actually get people to want to do that? Because frankly, we all used to Zoom. So I think that aspect of, being able to seriously, and I dare say, entice people is going to be key, because the next measure will be innovation. And I think those face-to-face meetings are paramount to creating, Google, everyone will tell you that is key for a successful team.
Yeah, and you don't know the number of face-to-face meetings you're not having because you're at home. You can't. It's hard to say, right? They're uncountable. So very interesting.
So yeah, I think that the last slide on that, we talk about people being, the vitality of people is key. I would just dare add that not only is it the vitality of people, but it's the connection of people that is key. That's going to continue to be really, really top of mind, and certainly is from the clients that we're speaking with. So, that focus in general of cultural spaces, collaborative spaces, sorry, I could say that, and also the ability to focus for people as they've gotten used to, at least some of us have, being able to work in a more focused environment. It's finding that balance is really where the sweet spot's going to be.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, I guess I'll just kind of somewhat wrap it up. We didn't want to keep everyone too long late in the evening. I appreciate everyone attending and tuning in, especially during the great debate going on. I'm sure there's some interesting things happening there. But thanks again to everybody who joined, and to my partners and team, and Vancouver Startup Week for having us. It's an honor and it's always a pleasure. It's our 4th year in a row being a part of this event, and it's really an awesome, just awesome to see the community come together. And unfortunately, we're not able to see each other face to face, but I'll take this any day. So you see our contacts here. I would encourage anyone to reach out to us individually anytime. We're more than happy to chat. You can look us up, email us, or LinkedIn, whatever it is.